Before we begin going over the sichos from today, I'd just like to relate briefly from the sicha of Monday night. This past Monday, Yud Aleph Teves, when the Rebbe came back from the Yoel, and after davening Mincha and Ma'ariv, after Ma'ariv, the Rebbe spoke in Inyan, which is of importance to each and every one of us. And in fact, the Rebbe in today's Farbrengen also referred to it, as we will hear later. The Rebbe spoke Monday evening in Inyan, being that we are 30 days before Yud Shvat, and in Halacha we find that 30 days is a proper time to prepare ourselves to a Yontif. The Gemara tells us that 30 days before a Yontif we have to begin learning the halachas of the Yontif. Same way the Rebbe says regarding this special day of Yud Shvat, as he used the expression of a pasuk. There's a pasuk which expresses itself, Ha'asiri yiyeh kodesh, the 10th will be holy, and referring here to Yud Shvat. The Rebbe requested from us to go through preparations to prepare ourselves for this specific day, for this outstanding date. The Rebbe continued that normally we know that Klal Yisrael is divided into two groups. There's the group of Yisachar and there's the group of Zevulun. Yisachar are those Yidden whose occupation is Torah, and they are fully involved in the learning of Torah, like Talmidei Yeshiva and Koil Yungalite and so forth. However, everybody else goes into the category of Zevulun, meaning that we are involved in an occupation, we are earning a living, and which occupies quite a bit of time of our day. However, at the same time, we are also obligated to have a kviyas itim b'Torah on a daily basis. And this kviyas has to have a set time in the day. In other words, we have to set aside a certain time of the day to learn Torah. And as the Rebbe expressed himself, it also has to be a kviyus b'nefesh. In other words, in our soul we have to have this set aside, this arrangement, that we have to know that this is there fixed, and we will not pass the day without this kviyus and learning. Especially in light of kshoit atzmacha v'achakach kshoit acherem, which is the Rebbe explained, it's a Gemara, which means that we have to beautify ourselves, and then we can go ahead and beautify others. So Mamela, there are things which we have to do with ourselves as far as uplifting ourselves in terms of preparation for this outstanding day, for this specific day. And therefore the Rebbe asked that we make a shiur noisaf, an additional inyan in learning, every single day from now, in other words, from when this was spoken, and naturally those of us that find out later can join in as soon as we find out about it, until Yud Shvat, learning every day an inyan noisaf in Torah, to give every day an additional amount of tzedakah. And as the Rebbe also stresses in the Sicha, which already came out published in Muga, which is reviewed by the Rebbe, they're also to excel in avodah, in other words, in davening, which means in all three areas of Torah, avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, to do something special each and every day from now until Yud Shvat. And in order that we should know that we are doing the right and proper thing, and being that every person is related to his own self, and therefore cannot judge himself and evaluate himself properly, therefore the Rebbe continues, the best way to make sure that we are doing the proper and right preparations for Yud Shvat is when we will do this in conjunction with our Rav. Continuation to the project of Aseiloch HaRav, that everybody should have his Rav, who he relates to. The same regarding all of these inyanim. This should be done relating to the Rav and being tested. In other words, the Rav should know exactly what we are doing as far as the preparations for Yud Shvat. And the Rebbe went further and asked that being that until Yud Shvat we have 30 days, which means 3 intervals of 10-day periods, that every 10 days everybody should go review with his Rav what he has accomplished during these 10 days. And the Rav in turn will notify the Rebbe what all of his Talmidim or Mushpoim or any of these descriptions we would like to use have accomplished during these 10 days. And the same thing will be in 10 days from now, and the same thing will be, in other words, the second time and again the third time Yud Shvat. The Rebbe said, though, there are those that may claim that they have an oinus. In other words, something came up, and we know al pi halach if some situation, some emergency situation arose, we know oinus rachmana patre. The Torah has told us that if somebody has some sort of an emergency situation, he's potter, he's relieved from doing this. So on one hand, he's taka relieved, but on the other hand, he has not accomplished this inyan he's lacking. Mele, the Rebbe says, each and every one of us should see to it to make sure that we have these proper preparations for Yud Shvat. The Rebbe stressed very strongly when he spoke Monday night that those names that will be submitted to him through the Ravs, everyone through his Rav, he will know that these people have gone through the preparations. If he will not see certain names on the list, that means without any interpretations and without any explanations, it means very, very simple that these individuals have not gone through this program of proper preparing ourselves for Yud Shvat. In fact, in the way the Sikha is printed, we have it now as it was reviewed by the Rebbe, this is something which has a shaykhus to each and every one of us, men, women, and children. Everyone, in accordance to their level, to go through this procedure of properly preparing ourselves for Yud Shvat, and in a way of adding on, being moisef in all the 3 areas of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasod. In fact, today when the Rebbe spoke about it, the Rebbe brought out that the first day of test will be Chof Tevis. Chof Tevis is the Yortzeit of the Rambam. It's a very important day. The second day, time of going through the testing and the report, will be on the day of Rosh Chodesh Shvat. The day of Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Torah tells us, Va'ashtei osa chodesh, ve'echad la chodesh, hoyil Moshe bayer as ha-Torah azois. It's a pasuk which tells us that the first day of Shvat, the first day of the 11th month, when we count from Nisan, Shvat is the 11th. So the first day of the 11th month, that is when Moshe began translating Torah in all languages. And then the third time is in the most suitable day, the day of Yud Shvat, that day in itself. Now we will go back to relate a little bit from this afternoon's Farbrengen. The Rebbe began the Farbrengen this afternoon that this Shabbos is a Shabbos of Chazak, which means it is a Shabbos when we finish a Chumash. And to be a little more specific, it is the Shabbos when we are finishing the first Chumash. And being that this Chumash is first in sequence, not only is it that way because it's the first in sequence, it means that these inyanim have a kedima, have a preference that the Rabbeinu Shalom chose that this should be in the first Chumash. And today we are having the Chazak on the first Chumash, and we are going over from the first Chumash into the second Chumash. The first Chumash, Vayechi, which is also known by the name of Sefer HaYosher, the Sefer of the righteous, And as Chazal explain, why does it have this name? Because in it is discussed about the Yesharim, about the righteous ones, the others, and the Shvatim, and so forth. And today we are completing this Chumash. And as the minig by Yidden is, that when we complete a Chumash, we all express it by saying Chazak, Chazak, v'nis Chazek. And this expression of Chazak, Chazak, v'nis Chazek, the Rebbe continues, this is said even before the person who has the Aliyah has a chance to make the Bracha Achrona, the last Bracha, which he makes at the end of the reading of the Torah. What does this show us? This shows us that the saying of Chazak is part of Kriyas HaTorah. To the extent that when is the bracha recited, the bracha is recited afterwards and not before that. What do we read about at the end of Parshas Vayechi? At the end of Parshas Vayechi, we read about the passing of Yosef. That Yosef passed away at the age of 110 years old, and the pasuk tells us, Vayomas Yosef ben Meya ve'esa shonim vayachnetu oisai vayosem ba'arain b'Mitzrayim. That after he passed away, the Mitzrim they embalmed him, Vayisem ba'arain b'Mitzrayim, and he was put in the coffin of Mitzrayim. And this is what the Chumash finishes with. Prior to that, the pasuk tells us that Yosef put an oath on the Yidden and told them that the time will come when the Rebbe will take him out of Mitzrayim, and he's asking that they should take along his atzomis, his body, together with them. But this is not the conclusion of the Chumash. What is the conclusion of the Chumash? The fact that Yosef died at the age of 110, and he was embalmed, and they put him ba'arim b'Mitzrayim. What is the message in this last pasuk, a hero which we can derive from this last pasuk? Mainly the pasuk before that, we hear Yosef referring to the fact that the Yidden will be going out of Mitzrayim. Here, Yosef is not talking about that. What is the pasuk stressing? The fact that he's being embalmed in Mitzrayim. What kind of a hero, what kind of a lesson could we take from such type of a contents, from such a pasuk? Rebbe continues, what is the inyan of embalming Yosef in Mitzrayim? That means that his body is kept in its completeness. In fact, that's the whole reason of embalming a body, so that it remains without anything lacking. Yidden are going into Golus, and Yidden are in need of koiches, of strength, to be able to hold out the Golus. What is the Torah telling us? That when Yidden are going into Golus, Yosef HaTzadik, is together with them in Golus. He was put away in Mitzrayim in such a way that nothing will be lacking from him, nothing will be missing from him, his body will remain in its completeness. And Yosef, by him remaining in Mitzrayim, this is giving the Yidden a koyach that the Yidden should be able to hold out and survive the Golus. And this is the whole union of Yosef. As stressed in the pasuk, as soon as Yosef was born, pasuk says, why was he named Yosef? He was named Yosef because Yosef Hashem li bein acher. The whole union of Yosef is to add on, to increase. As the famous taich which is brought in Chassidus, what is the union of Yosef? Yosef Hashem li bein acher. So Chassidus taich is, there are those Yidden who are unfortunately still in a level of acher. Acher means they are outsiders. What does Yosef do? Yosef extends a hand to those individuals and brings them in, that they too should be worthy of a title of Bain, the title of a son to the Rabbeinu Shalom. This is the whole union of Yosef. Yosef Hashem li Bain Acher. He takes the Acher and turns him into a Bain. This is what Yosef is all about. And as we find Yosef was given this name, and when Rachel said that she's naming him Yosef, because of Yosef Hashem Libein Acher and the Pashat Pshat, there was also an additional brother born, the brother of Binyamin. And we can find that there was something exceptional to Binyamin which none of the Shvatim had. All the Shvatim were born in Chutz La'aretz. However, where was Yosef born? Binyamin. Binyamin was born in Eretz Yisrael. As Rashi tells us right away, he was called Benyamin, Ben Yamin. Yamin meaning the right hand, meaning Eretz Yisrael. He was born in Eretz Yisrael as opposed to all the other brothers. Here the Rebbe brought out a very interesting thing, which he said, Mechapzich Gornish, we usually don't pay attention to it. When Binyamin was born, Rachel named him Ben Oini. What did Yaakov name him? Binyamin. The only time in the Torah where we find that his name should be Ben Oini is right here at his birth, when Rachel gave him that name. Otherwise, this name was never used. And what name was used? Always the name of Binyamin. Something very interesting, that the name which he was given by Rachel, this name did not stick to him. Rabbi brought an example. We know, for example, Avraham had the name Avram prior to being called Avraham. And quite many times he started to refer to it with the name of Avram. Until the Gemara tells us that Kol HaKoirei LaAvraham Avram Oiver Be'esef. Anybody would call now, refer to Avram Avinu, not with the name of Avraham, but with the name of Avram. The Gemara says he's Oiver Be'esef, he's Oiver Ne'esef. And in mitzvahs I say, why? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, your name will no longer be called Avram. From here and after, you're called Avraham. So Mamela, on one hand, we see that from here and after he's called Avraham, but on the other hand, we see that there was a certain period in his life when he was called Avraham. Mashen came by Binyamin, it is not so. Binyamin was never called Benoni. Just his mother gave him that name, and she obviously wanted to call him Benoni. But thereafter, he was constantly called Benyamin. Talking about this Inyan, Rebbe says the question also arises regarding all the names of the Shvatim, which we read in the Torah and Chumash Bereshis, that their mothers gave him the name, Reuven, Shimon, beginning from Reuven. And the Torah always gives us a reason why they were called with this name, what this name expresses. Was this name given by their bris? That's what the Rebbe is raising the question, because they all were gemalt, they all went through circumcision. Or even prior to their bris, as soon as they were born, their mothers expressed this name with whatever specific meaning by each one of them, as the Torah tells us, and this is the name which remained with them, and could be that the name was even given prior to their bris. But regardless, getting back to our Inyan, what did Yosef accomplish? Yosef accomplished Yosef Hashem Libein Acher in the simple sense of the pasuk, which there was an additional brother born to him, which was Binyamin. And the entire union of Yosef is the fact of adding on to be Mosif, to reach out and be Mosif to other Yid. So Mamela, getting back to our Inyan here, it is the same, that this fact that Yosef remained with the Yidden in Mitzrayim, and they preserved his body. Vayachne to Yosef, the pasuk tells us, this was the source of strength for the Yidden to hold out in Mitzrayim. Here the Rebbe continues, Nesi Doireinu, one of his names is also Yosef. Friedrich Rebbe. Mamela, now that we are in Golus, and we need the strength to be able to hold out in Golus, it is because we have the Rebbe with us. The Rebbe says a name is very important. A child even understands that a name by a person is a very big issue. Child is well aware of it. The child who's learning Chumash, Ben Chumash Lemikra, has an understanding in the importance of a name. Memela, to us as well, we are getting our strength to be able to survive in Golus and hold out in Golus because of the Yosef that is with us and here with us, so that we should be able to survive in Golus and hold out all of the Inyanim of Golus. From Parshas Vayechi, we are entering Chumash Shmos. In Chumash Shmos we learn the beginning, how the Yidden began the shibud, the bondage with Paro. And we read right away of Hava Nischak Maloi, how the Mitzrim expressed themselves. Hava Nischak Maloi, let us be smart and let us see that the Yidden don't grow, that to be able to overrule the Yidden. So obviously, question arises. We have learned in Chumash Bereishis, we have learned how Yosef was appointed to the extent of Bil Odoi Layarim Ishes Yadeves Radloi. Paro gave Yosef the full power that nobody should be able to lift his hand or foot without Yosef's permission, which means Yosef was the highest authority. And here we are learning about Hava Nischak Maloi, that they want to look for eitzes in order that the Yidden should not grow. Pen Yirbe Vayechi Sekrana Melcham, as the pasuk says, and therefore they're looking for ways and means to see to it to have a control over Yidden. Manashach. If on one hand we know that we are told that Yosef is the one that has the control over Mitzrayim, what's happening here with the Hava Nischak Maloi? So the Rebbe is explaining on the spiritual level. In other words, a Yid is in Golus. On one hand we have problems in Golus. On the other hand, we know that, as we just spoke, that we were given special koiches by the Sida Reinu that's with us and giving us koiches so that we should be able to hold out the Golus. How do these two inyanim go hand in hand? So here the Rebbe says that there's a maimah from the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek explains the entire concept when Avraham was told by the Rabbeinu Shloim to take Yitzchak and put him on the Akedah. So the pasuk uses the expression V'ho'alikim Nisa es Avraham. Normally, how do we learn the Taich Nisa? Nisayon, it's a test. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tested Avraham Avinu to see what his reaction will be. As we all know, that the Rebbe wanted to see, will Avraham have any afterthoughts? Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him that he's going to be blessed with a child, and he will have nachas from him, and so forth. And here, the Rebbe is telling him, go ahead and take your son and bring him for a call. And still, Avraham didn't have any second thoughts about it. This is the Pashut interpretation of an Nisayon, and Nisayon means a test. It says, the Tzemach Tzedek teaches that Nisayon has an additional interpretation in it as well. Nisayon means to uplift. And it's based on a pasuk, Orim Nisi, which there it also means to uplift. Memela, what did the Rabbeinu Shalom want to do by testing Avraham Avinu? The Rebbe wanted by that to uplift Avraham Avinu to a higher and yet higher spiritual madrega, spiritual level. The Rebbe continues that obviously there's a very obvious question. Avraham Avinu went with his son to the Akedah. Where did he take him to? He took him to Har Moriah. Where did they go from? They went from Hebron, because they just finished burying Sarah. From Hebron.
What?
Sarah. I'm sorry, but they weren't Hebron. No, I'm sorry, it was after. I'm sorry, but they weren't Hebron. When then they weren't in Hebron, then obviously they weren't Beersheba. They were in Beersheba. So they went from Beersheba to Har Moriah. From Beersheba to Har Moriah, the Rebbe says, is not a trip which should take 3 days. Why did it take him so long? The Rebbe says it took him long because there's a Medrash. Medrash says that during the trip, he had nisyonos, he had problems, he had tests. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a water, a river. There are 2 verses in the Medrash. There's one verse in the Medrash that it was a yam, it was an ocean. Another verse in the Medrash is that it was a river. And Avraham Avinu came to the river, and he just couldn't cross the river, or the ocean. The Medrash continues, Nisa Yadav Einav El Shamayim. He raised his eyes to the heaven, to the Rabbeinu Shalom, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away the entire ocean. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away the entire river, and Avraham was able to continue.
But what do we derive from this? That it wasn't an easy and smooth way. He had problems. He had big problems, until he finally was able to reach the destination of Hara Maria, where the Rebbeinu Shalom told him to bring Yitzchak as a korban. Same the Rebbe says, in spiritual sense, Benegay each and every one of us, we're in Galus, and we see things which seem like obstacles and interferences for our Avodas Hashem, but the truth is, it is only there because of an Esayin, because the Rebishter is testing us, because the Rebishter really wants to lift us up to a higher Madrege. That's the whole meaning of the Esayin, an uplifting. And Memela, that's why we come across inyanim which obviously may seem as interferences. Like we hear an inyan of Hava Nischak Maloi, like we read in the beginning of the Chazarah. So it scares us. But when we overcome it, a Yid is given the koiches by the Rebbeinu Shalom to overcome all the Chartumei Mitzrayim, all the advisors of Mitzrayim and all the advisors of Paro. A Yid is given koiches by the Rebbeinu Shalom to overcome all that. And when he's given these koiches, and he utilizes his koiches, then he succeeds, and he realizes that all of this is only an esayin, it's only a test. And in the chassidische taitcha of an esayin, it is only there that the Rebishter gives us an opportunity so that we should be able to come to a higher and yet higher madrig. And here the Rebbe says, the same we find Benegei the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe also had his nisyonis, his inyanim of nesayin. And we see that he succeeded in all of them, beginning from his leaving Soviet Russia, and he left Soviet Russia with his family, and with his svarim, with his ksavim, with his talmidim and talmidos. The Rebbe says that even to today's date, the influence of the Frierdiker Rebbe is still felt in Russia today. It seems that the Rebbe was referring here to the most recent Inyan, to the Inyan of the Didan Natzach. And trying to explain that all of this, Rebbe was explaining that all of this is also an Inyan of an Nisayin. And the Inyanim which we see, which seem to us that are there as interferences, are really not there. And they are not in existence, interfering with us. And what do we have to do? Our inyan is that when a new sefer comes out, or a new inyan is published, whether it's an inyan in Nigle, or an inyan in Chassidus, our attitude has to be that we have to learn this inyan right away, to such an extent, just like the Gemara says, Chayev Adam Loimer Bishvili Nivra Olam, that the Yid is supposed to say that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world because of him. Memela, we have to say that when new inyanim are printed and new inyanim are published, every one of us has to say that these things were printed and published because of him, so that he should be able, every one of us should be able to gain knowledge in another inyan in Torah and in another inyan in Torah. And the Rebbe says, there's no logic, it's a tipshus to be involved in other inyanim, figuring out gematrios, and in other words, it seems that the Rebbe does not want we should be involved in all the technical procedures and discussing and talking all about the case and all about these inyanim. The Rebbe wants that all of this should bring to a spiritual, to a ruchnistik hisafe. Various publications carried a lot of gematrias, taking the date when it happened and what it's equals to, and all kind of different types of gematrias. It seems like the Rebbe says that we don't have to put our effort into that, and not to put our effort into getting into background of the story and so forth. For us, what's negeya is Chayev Adam Loima Bishvili Nivra Olam. Everyone is to say that the world was created because of him, and Memela, all inyanim that we have in this world are because of him, because of every single individual. And the other Rebbe says that everything which a person comes across, there's a hero in Torah how he's to act on that. We are Yidin Ma'aminim, believers, B'nai Ma'aminim, children of believers, and there is a Mishnah. The Rebbe says a Mishnah is something which in Halacha, a Mishnah is supposed to be known by all. Everybody's supposed to be well versed in Mishnah, to the extent that Ta'ah b'dvar Mishnah choizer, if a bezin paskin the Shaila, and it came out to be that they made an error in something which, in other words, they said something which is contradictory to a Mishnah. excuse me. So the halacha is that they have to retract their psak and say the right way. Why? Because nobody could go against a Mishnah. A Mishnah is something which has to be known by everyone. Anybody who's paskin and halacha has to be well versed in all Mishnahs. And therefore, if you paskin something which is contradictory to a Mishnah, the halacha is ta bidvar Mishnah chayzer. His psak is has no status. It becomes ois psak. Memela, here there is an open Mishnah. Mishnah tells us, the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, hafachba v'hafachba tikulaba, and you'll turn it, meaning Torah, one way and another way, and you will find everything in it. So Memela, all in Yonim which we need for all of our Hirais, we find for everything a Hirai, a lesson in Torah. And Torah shows and guides each and every Yid what to do and how to do it and at what time to do it and so forth. But we have to know and realize that we have to be involved in the right and proper inyanim, and not to be involved in inyanim that are shtusim and tipshusdike things. The Rebbe expressed himself, but we have to know and be involved in the right inyanim, which is, as he again repeated, that learning new inyanim and Torah and adding new inyanim and Torah for ourselves as well as for others and so forth. It's customary in the Farbrengen that the Rebbe explains in Inyan, in the Rashi of the week, the weekly Sedre, as he stressed today a few times during the Farbrengen, the famous expression from the Alter Rebbe that we have to live with the Zeit, leben mit der Zeit, live with the times, and it's interpreted by the Mittaler Rebbe that what was the Alter Rebbe's intention, that we have to take our lesson from Parshas HaShavua. Mele, as the Rebbe expressed himself today, Bayid will leben mit der Zeit, in other words, he's living with it, he's putting his life into it, then we will find the heroes in the Seder of the week. The Mele also came to explaining a Rashi. The Rebbe says there's something which is not understood, totally not understood in the beginning of the Seder. A little bit into the beginning. Yaakov is very sick. He's 147 years old, and as the pasuk uses the expression "Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamus," he's about to pass away, and he's calling Yosef and is making with him the arrangement that Al Nosik Bereni b'Mitzrayim, he shouldn't remain in Mitzrayim. Then we begin learning in Kapitel Memches pasuk Aleph. Yosef was told that his father is sick. Who told him? Ephraim told him. Why Ephraim? Because Ephraim was learning by Zayde by Yaakov. And Memela, when he realized that Yaakov turned so ill to the extent that he's about to pass away, he went and called his father. Then the pasuk goes on, what Yaakov told Yosef. Telling him that his two children who were born in Mitzrayim, Ephraim and Menashe, are just like Reuven and Shimon. In other words, he's giving them a status of Shvatim. Then we come to Pasuk Ches. Vaya Yisrael es b'nei Yosef. Yaakov saw the b'nei Yosef. Vayomer mi elis. He said, who are them? Who are they? Who are these people? What did Yosef respond? B'neihem. These individuals are my children. In other words, he had Ephraim and Menashe with him. So he's telling the Rebbeinu Shalom, these individuals are my... he's telling Yaakov, they are my children. Asher nasan li elakim bazeh, that Hashem has given me here. So Yaakov said, Vayomer kocham na'elai, bring him close to me, v'avarachim, and I will bench them. If we look into Rashi and these psukim, what does Rashi teach? Vayomer mi eile, who are they? Meheichon yatzu eile, where did these grow out of? She'einu ruya lebracha, they're not worthy of getting a bracha. Obviously, because we look into Rashi, we see, Rashi tells us in the Rashi before, that Yaakov wanted to bench them, but the Shechina has left him. Shechina passed away from Yaakov. Why? Because he realized who are going to be the descendants of Menashe and of Ephraim. Yerovam and Achav will be descendants of Ephraim. Yehu and his children will be descendants of Menashe. And mainly he saw what type of descendants he's going to get from them, so the Shechina left. And he said, who are these that are not worthy for a bracha? Rebbe got involved in these psukim and explained them. On one hand, Yaakov had problems seeing. His eyesight was weak. Yes. Pardon? Oh. So the Rebbe stressed, true that we learn about it in Pasuk Yud, which means that the child who's learning these psukim did not learn it yet. However, Rashi, who's mefeirish the psukim, who's explaining the psukim, was definitely aware of what the Pasuk tells us in Pasuk Yud, that Eini Yisrael kovdu mezoikin, that he couldn't, it was hard for Yaakov to see. Now what's happening here? Let us for a minute get an idea, analyze what's going on. Yaakov is sick to such an extent that Ephraim, who was his disciple and learning with him, and the Rebbe says Ephraim wasn't learning with him from yesterday. Obviously Ephraim was sitting and learning by his Zayda for 17 years, because Yaakov was in Mitzrayim for 17 years. The Rebbe says there's a medrash that not only was Ephraim learning by him, but Menashe was also learning by him. So both of his Einiklach, both of Yosef's children, was spending time with the Zayda they were learning. Now Yosef gets a message. The messenger was Ephraim, that his father turned seriously ill, to the extent that he's about to pass away, and Mamela, he's coming. Who does he come with? He comes with his children. For what reason does he come with his children? Naturally, he comes with his children to get a bracha. This is something which the child who's learning Chumash can understand it, and realizes it very well, that it's very suitable for a son to come to his father the moments before his father is passing away, and to ask for a bracha. Furthermore, we remember what we learned in Chumash already. When Yaakov left Yitzchak, and he ran away from the problems that he had with Esav, he also went to his father for a bracha. So there he went away, he went away for a time, it was an indefinite time, he didn't know how long he'll stay away, and his father was still alive, and he understood very well that he has to get a bracha from his father. So here, when Yosef realizes and hears that his father Yaakov is about to pass away, so it's self-understood that he's taking his sons and he's coming to his father for a bracha. Now what kind of a question is this Mi'ela? What is he asking him, Mi'ela? Who are these people? And what does Rashi teach? Mi'ela she'einem ru'im lebracha. Who are these people that are not worthy to get a bracha? Meheichan yotzu elu. Where did these come from? She'einem ru'im lebracha, that are not worthy of getting a bracha. Obviously, something which should have been very simple in Yaakov's mind who these people are. He sees Yosef walking in with two individuals, so he could have figured out very well. It could be that he didn't get a clear view, because it was hard for him to see. But he sees Yosef coming in with two other adults, that he can't verstehen. He was able to understand who he's coming with and for what reason they're coming. Now what's happening? Bikesh levorchem. So Mamela, Yaakov wanted to give them a bracha. However, the problem was, Nistalka Shechina Mamela, the Shechina left him. So Mamela, he would kind of like complain, Mi'ela, who are these individuals with you? If I can't give a bracha, something must be wrong with it. So what is Yosef telling him? Baneiheim, they are my children, Asher Nasan Li'elakim Bazeh. What does Rashi tell us? That he showed him Ishtar Eresen and Ishtar Ksuba. And Rashi continues that Yosef begged Rachmim, and again the Ruach HaKodesh rested upon Yaakov, and he gave him a bracha. What did Yosef? What did he show him? He showed him two documents. He showed him a document of his Eiresen. Eiresen means of his engagement with Osnas, and he also showed him the Ksubah. The Rebbe says, what makes us say that he had these documents? He brought them along to show them. He expresses himself, why does he add on the word bazeh? Zeh is an expression which we use, kazeh rei v'kadesh, when we want to pinpoint on something. Here it is, right in front of us, then we use the expression zeh. Pasuk here quotes what Yosef said. Yosef could have said, these are my children, asher nosan li elakim, that the Rebbe gave me. Why is he adding on the word bazeh? Bazeh means he's showing his father Yankov, these are the children that were born through these documents. In other words, Yosef got married in Mitzrayim, so Yosef is thinking to himself, maybe his father is suspecting that something went wrong with his marriage. Something wasn't kosher, to use the expression, along the lines in his chassan and his having the children and so forth. So he's telling him, Tate, here I have a shtar eres. I have a document that the engagement, in Gemara there's a concept of eresen and nesuyin. Eiresen means like the engagement phase of it. It's stronger than engagement in today's engagement. Then is Nisuyin, which is the final marriage. So he's telling him here is the shtar of Eiresen. That our Eiresen, our engagement, was conducted properly al pi Torah. Then comes, he had to show his father also that his marriage, that his Nisuyin was properly. Now, how is a proper marriage al pi Torah? Proper marriage al pi Torah is a isha niknis b'shloisha drachim. We learned the first mission in Kiddushin that a woman gets married in 3 different ways: b'kesef, b'shtar, or b'biyah. Shtar means a document. Kesef means you give her money. You could give her money. You could give her a gift, something which has the value of money. So what did Yosef bring along? He didn't bring along the document of marriage, if they got married through a document. He didn't bring along the gift or whatever which he presented Asnas. He could have brought that along also. That he also didn't. Rebbe says the reason he didn't bring the shtar, if the marriage was b'shtar, perhaps this is something which his wife has to take care of. It's something which is in her possession, and she guards. However, we know that the ksubah is also something which the wife has to guard and take care of. How did he get a hold of the ksubah? So he asked his wife that he's going to his father with his sons, and please give me the ksubah, I should be able to show it to father if needed. So the ksubah she did give. So she could have given the document of marriage also. Rabbi says, for the one who's learning Chumash will remember that when we learned earlier by Avram was married to Sarah. Then we read in the Torah that he had what the Torah calls a pilegesh. Pilegesh is not a regular marriage. And this is something which Yosef, growing up in the house of Yaakov, was familiar with, that there's such a concept. If we look back in Chumash, in the end of Chayei Sarah, we will see an interesting Rashi. Rashi there tells us a marriage, a regular marriage, is with a ksubah, with a document of a ksubah. A pilegesh is without a ksubah. So that is why Yosef chose to bring the document of ksubah, because by bringing the document of ksubah, he's showing his father that these are children from a regular marriage, went through properly. It's not even a pilegesh, something which was permitted at that time. But however, Yosef did not choose this way of building a family through a pilegesh. Yosef built his family with a regular wife who had a ksubah. And that is why once he showed his father that everything went in a kosher way, he showed it in the shtar Eiresen, he showed it in the shtar ksubah, bikesh Yosef rachmim ala davar v'nochal of ruach hakodesh. Then we come to the last pasuk, the last quotation of Rashi in this pasuk, where Rashi says, Vayomer. So Yaakov said, Kochem na'alai v'avorchem, bring him to me and I will bless them. So Rashi explains this is what the pasuk says in Hosea. There's a pasuk in Novi Hosea, V'noichi tirgalti le'Ephraim, kochem al zeroisei. So which means, Tirgalti ruchi biyankov, b'shvil Ephraim, ad shelokhon al zeroisei. In other words, the pasuk says, he has interceded for Ephraim, and he took them upon his arms. I have placed my spirit upon Yaakov for the sake of Ephraim, until Yaakov took them upon his arms. Rabbi says, what shaykhs does this have to Rashi here? Why does Rashi here get involved in explaining a pasuk in Hosea? True, the name Ephraim is mentioned there, which can be explained through the concept how Yaakov took Ephraim to his stretched his arms to Ephraim and blessed Ephraim and Menashe. But what shaykhs does it have here? So the Rebbe says, it seems to him that it's not that Rashi is explaining the words, Vayomer kochem na'alai v'avorachem, bring him to me and I will bench them. And Mela, this has a shaykhs to the pasuk, kochem al zeroisei, I have taken Ephraim on my hands. The Rebbe says there's a printing error in this entire Rashi. There is one beginning. Vayah Yisrael es b'nei Yosef. You see, we are usually under the habit that whenever we see a quotation from a pasuk in Rashi, it seems to us that here a new Rashi begins. That's how the system was set up. A quotation from the pasuk, then comes the commentary of Rashi. That finishes, we again have a quotation from the pasuk, and again commentary. That's how we got ourselves used to learning Rashi. The Mela, when the printer saw that Rashi is quoting a pasuk, he turned it into a beginning of a new Rashi. This is his error. Rashi here is explaining an entire thought regarding these two psukim. So the beginning of the Rashi is really Vaya Yisrael es b'nei Yosef. Yaakov saw the children of Yosef. So Rashi begins explaining the entire inyan what's happening here. And he's explaining, Bikesh levolcham, he wanted to bench them, and the Shechina left them. Memele Yaakov exclaimed to Yosef, who are these individuals that are not worthy of a bracha? So he told them these are his children that were born through the ksuba, and he showed them the document of ksuba, and he showed them the document of Averis and of engagement. But the Rebbe says this is not broken up into numerous little pieces of Rashi. This is all one Rashi. Memele, once this concept is concluded, Rashi says this is what has a shaykhus to the pasuk, not specifically the words of kochem na'alai va'avorachem. It's the entire inyan here has a shaykhus to the pasuk of anoichi tegalti la'Ephraim kochem al zrei Yosef. Why? Because this led to the fact of upbringing close Ephraim and seeing to it that Ephraim and likewise Menashe received the bracha from Yaakov. Rebbe the Farbrengen also stressed again the importance of demanding and begging from the Rabbeinu Shalom. The Rabbeinu Shalom should take us out of Golus. The Rebbe says we are children to the Rabbeinu Shalom. The world knows it's an accepted practice that when children come to their father and beg their father for something, the father usually gives in and gives it to the children. This would be so when something is requested once, twice. Here it is not only requested once or twice. We are constantly, for a period of over 1900 years, we are begging the Rabbeinu Shalom that he should take us out of Golus. And again the Rebbe stressed, not only is it Yidden are in Golus, it's Shchinta b'Galusa. The Shchina, the Hashem is with us in Golus as well. As there's a pasuk, B'chol tzarosam, loy tzar, and all the engschaften and all the tzaras for Yidden, loy, to him, to the Rabbeinu Shalom, he feels it along with us as well. And that is why we recite in davening constantly, 3 times a day, in Shachas Mincha Ma'ariv, in the weekdays, Et Semach David Avdecha Meheras Atzmiach. Rabbeinu Shalom, we're asking for the Geula. And on Shabbos, or Yontif, when we don't say a Semach David Avdecha, but we still say V'sachzena Ineinu B'shufcha L'tzion Barachamim, our eyes should see when we return to Tzion, and it means very, very simple. And the Pashat Taich V'sachzena Ineinu, the Rebbe touched up these words. Our eyes shall see B'shufcha when you will return us L'tzion, meaning Eretz Yisrael Barachamim. Mamela, as brought in Svarim, which was mentioned to it many occasions already, that Svarim tell us the importance and the great inyan of Yidden begging from the Rabbeinu Shalom that the Rebbe takes us out of Golus. And it's already the highest time for it. And that is why it is the time that we should scream, Ad Mosai. How much longer will we be in Golus? And Aloi Golus, Aloi is obviously a Russian expression. Golus should end. We have been in Golus enough. And Ad Mosai Kates haplois, how much longer will it take till the wonder when the Rebbe will, Kates meaning for the end of Golus, or there's an expression in Tilim, Ad Mosai Yechraf Tzor, how much longer will we be surrounded with Engschaft, with problems, with Kvetchenish, with Tzoras. And Memela, it's already the time that by Yidden screaming Ad Mosai, how much longer, the Rebbe should take us out of Golus and send Mashiach. And Farbrengen, Rebbe also referred to the daily Shir of the Rambam. And the Rambam, in today's Shir and in yesterday's Shir, is explaining the differences of Dinoi Momenis and Dinoi Nefoshes. Which means, there are halachas, how Bezdin is supposed to act when there's a financial problem. And definitely, the Rebbe added on, we see the Rambam explains the importance, how Bezdin is supposed to treat any financial matter. Any matter, financially, from any Yid, regardless who the Yid is. If we are only talking about the value of a pruta, which is in that generation, those generation a cent, it's probably more than a penny today, it has to be treated by Bezdin accordingly. Because we have a klal, we have a rule, ha-Torah chosal mamoinen shel Yisrael. The Torah has expressed concern on Jewish funds, on the money of a Yid. The Torah is eager to take an interest in the monies of a Yid, in the funds of a Yid. B'meila, when we have any type of din Torah, which means when there's a dispute between one person and another person, it has to be handled properly by a Bezdin. So the din is that min ha-Torah, it is sufficient that one person should handle a matter of finances. However, the Chachamim have arranged that not one should do it. It is a requirement to have a Bezdin, a court of 3 people. Now the question arises regarding nefashos, when we're dealing with the matter of life and death. A matter of life and death cannot be handled by a Bezdin of 3. We have different Batei Dinim. There's a Bezdin of 23, there's a Bezdin of 71, 70, there's different opinions in the Gemara. And they are the ones that can handle Dinei Nefashos, when it's a matter of life and death. To issue a death penalty, it has to be handled by one of those Batei Din. Now the Rambam explains the various differences in procedures of a Bezdin, whether it's a matter of finances that is handled, or it's a matter of nefashis, a matter of life that is handled. Amongst these differences, there's also a rule: if everyone says chayiv, it's a matter of life and death, and the entire court, everybody says that we have to kill this person. So it's an interesting halacha. Then the halacha is, if everybody is under the opinion that we have to kill him, then we don't kill him. When do we kill him? If the majority of the court claims that he deserves to be killed, then we kill him, because we follow the majority. However, when it is not the majority, but it is everyone, every single member of the court claims that this person deserves to be killed, because he has committed a crime where he deserves misa, so the halacha is potter. That's the expression. The Rebbe added on, there are some Rishonim that learn that potter doesn't mean that we send him back home and he's a regular citizen. We don't kill him, but we have to treat him with different type of punishment. Rebbe says it's very hard to accept this interpretation, because the Rambam, who's a halacha sefer, and the Rambam as a method of halacha has to explain everything very clearly and very precisely. So the Rambam will not use an expression of potter when it means he's potter from being killed. And there's a catch in it, however, Bezdin has to give him different type of penalties other than killing him. It's very hard to learn that way. Potter means case closed, he's free. Therefore the Rebbe says we have to understand what is the logic of this halacha. Why? If everybody says that he deserves misa, that he deserves to be killed, then he's not killed, then he's potter. Rebbe also raised detailed questions in the Rambam, in the text of the Rambam itself, that when the Rambam brings the differences between Dinei Momenis and Dinei Nefashis, which means financial matters, as opposed to matters of life and death, there the Rambam does not bring this difference, though this is a difference, the difference which you just mentioned. If everybody says, the entire court says that he has to pay the money or not pay the money, then we follow everyone's opinion, though the opinion is so by everyone, by every single member. When it comes to an inyan of Misa, we don't follow the majority. And the Rambam does not... We don't follow everyone. In other words, everybody unanimously, they have unanimously all paskened that he deserves to be killed, then he is potter. But this specific difference between Dinei Momenis and Dinei Nefashis, the Rambam doesn't mention. The Rebbe says that the Mefarshim asked this question and there are various answers given on it. But now let us get into understanding why Take is this so that if everybody says that he deserves to be killed, it's a decision which is accepted by everyone unanimously, then we don't kill him, he's potter. What's the logic for it? The Rebbe says there are 2 interpretations. There's one interpretation that says, why do we kill a person when he's committed something wrong? Because by killing him, this is his kapara, this is his forgiveness. In other words, his soul will be forgiven for doing whatever wrong thing he did, because he's killed, so he already had his punishment. There are those that say, if everybody feels that he deserves to be killed, that means that this person really did something terribly bad, behind any shadow of doubt. meaning that this person really sinned very severely. For this particular case, we cannot say that killing him will be a kapara. In other words, it will not be mechaper. Killing him will not bring his forgiveness, because he has sinned much stronger, where killing will not erase the crime that he did, will not give him forgiveness. Therefore, they claim, why kill him? When we kill him, and we accomplish something by it, we accomplish his forgiveness, then there's room to kill a person. However, when we're not accomplishing any forgiveness for him, why should we kill him? Rebbe says this is an unacceptable perush. How can we say a thing like that? How can Torah say that a Yid did a crime where there's no room for forgiveness? There's no such thing. Forgiveness is there for everyone. How can we say that a Yid did something and Torah says that we don't treat him with his penalty because he anyways won't be forgiven? How can we say a thing like that? Therefore, the Rebbe says we must learn different. When everybody, Rebbe says, gangs up on a person, the entire court unanimously comes up with an opinion that this person did something wrong, can't be. We're talking about a Yid, a Ben Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Nobody sees room for this person for a schus, meaning for merit. Nobody sees with their right eye. In other words, nobody sees here any room, any hope for this person. Everybody comes up with an opinion, with a negative opinion against him. This is impossible on a Yid. Rebbe learns the complete opposite way. And that is why, if kulam mechayvin, if everybody feels that this person is worthy to be killed, and everybody says so, this is a decision which is accepted by everyone unanimously, and nobody sees any schus for this Yid, as soon as something is wrong here. It can't be. Every Yid, there's room for schus for every individual Yid, no matter what he did. And then Mela, if it is not seen by the Bezdin, if it's not seen by the Jewish court, something is wrong here, and we can't treat him properly. But as the Rebbe continued, we see how careful the Torah is when it comes to punish a Yid, to such an extent that we know that you're in Yonim of Malchus, meaning that a person has to be whipped 39 times that he committed something wrong. So the Torah uses the expression Arboyim Yakenu. He's being whipped 40. The Chachamim said, Chachamim learned Pshat in the Pasuk that it's not meant 40, it is meant 39. More than that, more than 39, we're not allowed to give him. We're not allowed to give him one whip more. He says that the Chachamim have learned Pshat in the Torah. Even where the Torah says that a person who is worthy of being whipped 40 times, that the Torah doesn't really mean the 40 times. Torah means it's only 39 times. And 39 times will be enough of the punishment for this person. In other words, we see all along that where the Torah even finds for need to punish a person, however, the Torah is not looking to just give it to him in a way. The punishment is there that it should bring its results. But to give him chas v'shalom more than that, we're not allowed. Farbrengen, the Rebbe, also spoke about what he's been requesting recently about the inyan of Batei Chabad. Everybody be involved in the opening of a Chabad house, whether it is a general Chabad house or an individual Chabad house, a private Chabad house, and seeing to it that all of our houses are Chabad houses. In other words, we excel. What is a Chabad house? The Rebbe keeps on stressing a Chabad house means to excel in Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, in all three angles. And then when we have, our union is that we have to excel in all of these inyanim in our house. The Rebbe added on, the Gemara tells us that when Mashiach will come, all the shuls of Bavel will be transplanted and taken out of Bavel, meaning all the cities of exile, not specifically Bavel, and will be taken along to Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe says, by creating all of our houses, our personal houses, as Batei Chabad, we will accomplish that all of our houses will also go along to Eretz Yisrael and being taken out of Golas and being implanted again in Eretz Yisrael. Rebbe stressed the importance of having a tzedakah pushka, that every child should have a tzedakah pushka in her room, and specifically about children, that every child should turn her room into a Chabad house. Rebbe mentioned something very interesting. There's a halach in Shulchan Aruch that a person who does not feel well and cannot go to shul
So the halacha is that this person naturally davens at home. However, he should try and see to it to daven at the same time when the minyan is davening, when the tzibur is davening. The same the Rebbe says, we are all to participate in shiurim of Torah. If in an event, for whatever reason, we cannot make it to a shiur which is being learned publicly, at least we should try and learn in our house at the same time when the shiur is being learned in the Beis HaMedrash in a public shiur. And by doing that, we become associated with the rabbim who is learning the shiur. Rabbi also stressed that by doing all of these inyanim, we are preparing ourselves for Geula. Rabbi mentioned already many times that the difference between Golus and Geula is with one letter. Geula has an aleph, and Golus doesn't. What does the aleph mean? The aleph reminds us on the Rabbeinu Shalom. Rabbi again stressed today that by us inserting the Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, that's the aleph. Which aleph do we mean? We mean the aleph which is taken from Anoichi. And this Anoichi becomes part of each and every one of us. When we build up the aleph within each and every one of us, the Anoichi, but it turns into Geula. But also referred to the inyan of Avos Yisrael very strongly, and that is why it was instituted by the Alter Rebbe. Though it is a mitzvah saseh in the Torah, it's a pasuk in the Torah, still the Alter Rebbe has instituted that before we begin davening, before we begin asking for our needs, when we ask for specific needs from the Rabbeinu Shalom, what we should do before davening is proclaim Arini mekabel alai mitzvah saseh shel v'ahavta lo yachal kamoicha. We are proclaiming that we are accepting the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, and Memele, in light of the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, we will involve other Yidden in all of these inyanim, and not just satisfy ourselves that we are in it, and we have satisfied our own souls, but we will reach out to other Yidden, and all of this is done in the proper feeling of Avos Yisrael. Rebbe related that the Frierdiker Rebbe told, related of a pidyon which he saw written by his father, the Rebbe Rashab. And the Rebbe Rashab writes in that pidyon, he's asking Yehi Ratzoin, that it should be the will of the Rabbeinu Shalom sheyifoil bi ubahashoimim, that what the Mamorim Chassidus, which he was chazering, this is what the Rebbe Rashab writes, that it should have an effect on himself, and it should also have an effect on the listeners. That's what he's begging the Rebbe, that he should have hatzlach and that. The Rebbe says that being that this is reaching to us, the Mela, our attitude also has to be the same. Our involvement in all of this inyanim has to be in a format that we have to ask for a bracha, yifol bi, that it should affect us. It should also affect the shoimim, those people who we are reaching out to, the Yidden whom we are trying to influence. So we are asking that it should have the proper effect on us, as well as the proper effect on those listeners, meaning on the Yidden who are reaching out to. The Rebbe also spoke about the importance of reaching out, not only to Yidden, but also to Goyim. Because this is the inyan of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, especially in the type of country which we are living in, which this is a Malchus Shel Chesed, and there's nobody interfering. On the contrary, we can definitely reach out to Goyim and familiarize them with the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and this is what the Rambam tells us, that it is our obligation that we have to do that and reach out to the Goyim and see to it that they should fulfill all of the 7 mitzvahs which they are obligated to fulfill. And when the Rebbe concluded the Farbrengen, he again reminded us about the inyan which he spoke earlier this week, about the importance of each and every one of us preparing ourselves properly for Yud Shvat and going through the Asay L'Charav and going through all these 3 tests during the 30-day period between Asara B'Tevis and Yud Shvat. One which will come out to be on Chof Tevis, which is the Rambam's Yotzeit. Another one will fall out to be on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and then the third one which will come out to be on the day of Yud Shvat in itself.